So, Andy Middleton of AM Arboreals. I like to think I specialize in arboreal boas and pythons. By that, I mean, green tree pythons. I have a pair of Moluccan scrub pythons, diamond pythons, emerald tree boas, northerns, and basins. So, yeah, that's kind of my bread and butter and kind of what I'm, the most focused on when it comes to reproduction. Do I feel a level of responsibility to class the lapis, being one of the very few people with Moluccan scrub pythons? Absolutely. I couldn't tell you at this point with the recent captive bred clutch out there how many pairs, are together in collections. I know at one point, just from my guesstimate, I was probably one of 6 people. So I absolutely do feel responsible to, do everything I can by them to, try and get them to reproduce and distribute, more than likely keep the bulk of them and then distribute them to capable hands. That being said, with everything in my collection, I feel a level of responsibility, absolutely. So it's not like the Moluccans are special here, everything is kind of on that level to an extent. When it comes to them, absolutely. So as far as keeping Moluccans, is their care any more difficult than other scrubs in the hobby? And I live here in Connecticut, and we can only keep Tracier, class lapis, and Nada. So my options were fairly limited from the start. So I have only personally worked with class lapis, so I don't have much of a benchmark on how they compare to the amethystina and other forms of scrubs. But as far as I know and understand, it's relatively the same across the board. If I had something like barnecks or southerns or something, I would more than likely keep them identical to how I keep the Moluccans. What and why do the designer Chondros appeal to you? So for the what, I love the blue line stuff, the higher black stuff, and the calico and tricolor stuff. When it comes to the why, there's just so much possibilities and there's so much luck involved, so much luck of the draw, and you just never know what you're gonna get. So I like the idea of having something to continue to work on and continue to build on, for multiple generations, to try and make each generation better, and to maybe one day meet the goal of the phenotype I have in mind. So another aspect of why Chondros appeal to me is the extensive history and lineage information that is available and that comes along with some of these animals. The lineages go back 50 plus years. I am a big nerd when it comes to that stuff. I love digging into it. And when I'm looking at buying something, I love to dive into the lineage and how is that going to fit with what I have and, to reach the goals I have. So it's just so endless. And there's so many variables at play that it's just, you never have it figured out and you never have it nailed down. And there's no real science or means, that are really ironed out to how you get to that goal you have in mind. So just the many possibilities, the many variables, it just makes it a little more of a challenge, but I like the challenge, so that's part of why I'm into them for sure. So I love locality animals. I would personally love a pair of Maruks, a nice solid full stripe going from head to tail. I love Maniquaris and sarongs. I just love everything. I love Beox. They've all got their own little thing. So I have a couple locality projects on the side. I wouldn't say they have as much of an emphasis as some of the designer stuff I work with, but I certainly love having them around and plan on using them for outcrosses with some of the designer animals, like the tricolor project I have going on. It's Beox make a great fit for outcrossing to that stuff. I think that's how some of the locality stuff fits in here, with outcrosses and some select pure locality projects. You never know what's going to happen. So would I recommend Kanjos or emerald tree boas to someone wanting to get into arboreals? They're two very different animals, but very similar at the same time. I think if you start with the United States captive born and bred animal from, whether it's a green tree or an emerald, you're going to be off to a great start, especially if you get it from somebody reputable who's been doing this for some time. You're going to get off to the right foot. To me, they're both a pleasure to keep. They have their own little quirks. They're both have the same amount of forgiveness, I would say. Very similar parameters. I personally don't have a preference. They're unique in their own ways and special in their own ways to me. So, it's whatever, catches your eye or whatever, once you understand the parameters, whatever sounds more up your alley, that's what I would go with. They're both incredible animals. Dipping your toe into colubrids recently, and what has been the biggest adjustment to keeping them compared to pythons? Well, it's been a huge change of pace, that's for sure. Some of the things that come to mind are their feeding frequencies. With pythons, I can kind of just forget about them for, 2-3 weeks. When it comes to adults, even 4 weeks, and I don't even think twice about it. And with the colubrids I'm working with, you start to, there has been some instances where I didn't feed babies for 2 weeks, just because I was still in the python mind frame, and you see them thin out a lot quicker than pythons, that's for sure. Additionally, their bowel movement tendencies, that was something to get used to. With colubrids, once it goes in, it seems to come right out, as opposed to green tree females, they hold their bowel movements sometimes weeks, months. That was a huge change of pace for sure. They've been a blast and I love them, and something else that's different, to keep things spiced up.